All right, diving right in, everybody. Brought to you, by the way, by James Unscripted. And, well, sometimes Steeler football feels pretty unscripted, too. But not in a good way lately.
Yeah, rough season.
So that's what we're getting into today. They're disappointing end to this season. We got articles, analyses, the whole 9 yards, and it's not pretty.
Not pretty at all.
4-game losing streak. Couldn't even score 20 points in any of those games.
Yeah.
Limped into the wild card round. Not the Steeler way, is it?
Nope, not at all.
So we got to ask, did they pick the right quarterbacks? Is Tomlin on the hot seat? What's the deal with Pickens? Lots to unpack.
Yeah, lots to unpack. One thing that jumps out to me right off the bat, even with bringing in Wilson and Fields, the passing game, barely improved.
Yeah. You think 2 veteran quarterbacks, you're expecting some fireworks.
Right. Exactly. But they ended up 24th in the league? I mean, come on.
It's wild. 25th the year before. So what? They gained like 100 more passing yards the whole season?
Oh.
That's underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah, you got to wonder, is it more than just the quarterbacks themselves?
That's the question. Is it personnel, coaching, some kind of mix? I mean, teams with passing like that, they're usually fighting just to get to the playoffs, never mind contending for a Super Bowl.
Exactly. Makes you think.
And speaking of personnel.
Yeah.
Big story this season was, well, the lack of chemistry, to put it nicely, between Pickens and Wilson. One article even quotes J.J. Watt, and he's saying there's clearly something going on between those two.
Uh-oh. Yeah, and looking at Pickens' numbers, well, there aren't many numbers to look at. He missed some games, the hamstring, but even when he played, some real rough outings. That Bengals game, 1 catch, 0 yards. Oof.
Brutal. And the drops. We were all expecting Pickens to be this game changer. And, the Steelers' run game was hardly setting the world on fire, so they needed him to step up.
Absolutely. When you can't run the ball effectively, you got to make it up in the air. And if your star receiver and quarterback aren't on the same page, that hurts the whole offense.
No kidding. Now, one article makes this kind of intriguing argument. Maybe, just maybe, Kenny Pickett got too much blame for the offensive struggles last season. What do you think? Is there something to that?
It's an interesting take, for sure. Their argument is that the real problem was the coaching and the play calling, not Pickett himself. And if you look at it, the passing this season was only a tiny bit better than it was with Pickett under center.
So are we saying Pickett was a fantastic quarterback? No, not at all. But is it possible he got scapegoated for bigger problems with the offense? That's what we got to figure out. What do you think? Was it fair to put all that blame on Pickett? Or was he just, a symptom of something deeper?
It's really hard to say for sure. Pickett definitely had his ups and downs, but the fact that the offense kept sputtering, even with 2 new quarterbacks, well, it does make you wonder if there's more to the story.
Right. And that leads us to Coach Tomlin himself. 8 seasons without a playoff win. Some of these articles are getting pretty critical of his leadership.
Yeah, there's one that really lays into Tomlin's hiring choices, especially the offensive coordinators. Their argument is he's stuck with coaches who just aren't getting results. Loyalty's a good thing, but
at some point, you got to see the results, right? And this same article, they're saying Tomlin won't take responsibility. It's always next man up, which that's great and all, but are there deeper issues he's not addressing?
If the system itself is broken, then swapping players in and out, that might not be the answer. Maybe Tomlin needs to take a look in the mirror, see if his whole approach needs an update.
It's tough. Tomlin's never had a losing season in Pittsburgh, but the pressure is building. 8 years without a playoff win, especially for a franchise with, well, the Steelers' legacy. So, is his job actually on the line? Or is this just end-of-season noise from fans and the media?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Tomlin's got a lot of credit built up over the years, but even the most patient fans have their limits. If the Steelers don't show some serious improvement next season, I think those calls for change are going to get a lot louder. Thinking about Tomlin's coaching, that whole next man up thing, it makes you wonder, with this offense being so stuck, is that part of the problem?
Yeah, that philosophy has worked for him, right? Never losing season. But maybe it's also keeping them from getting to that next level. Like maybe this system needs a refresh, a total overhaul.
It's possible, right? The NFL is always changing. How you play, the players themselves. What worked a few years ago, maybe it doesn't cut it anymore if Tomlin's not willing to adapt.
One article even calls him stubborn. Like refuses to change, won't take responsibility when things go south. Is that too harsh?
He's definitely got a strong personality, that's for sure. Does things his way. Doesn't back down from a challenge. But stubborn. It depends. Some might say he's decisive, sticking to his guns.
There's that line, isn't there? Conviction is good, but so is being flexible. The best coaches They can do both. Change things up, but also stay true to who they are.
Exactly. And that's what Tomlin's got to figure out, how to grow without losing what made him successful in the first place.
Let's go back to Kenny Pickett for a sec. You mentioned some people think he got blamed too much for the offense sputtering. What's the thinking there?
The idea is he got a raw deal, young quarterback, thrown in there with a bad offensive line, not a lot of weapons to work with. He made mistakes, yeah, but most young QBs do.
And their point is, those mistakes, maybe they looked worse because the whole offense was a mess. Like, Pickett wasn't the disease, he was a symptom.
Right, like learning to drive in a car that's got a busted engine. You might be a decent driver, but you'll never really know until you get a car that runs right.
That's a perfect way to put it. It shows how important context is. You can't just look at a player's stats. You got to see the whole picture, the team around him, the coaching, all of it.
Exactly. And with Pickett, he didn't get a lot of help, that's for sure. The O-line was rough, no running game to speak of, play calling was predictable.
So even if Pickett wasn't going to be a superstar, maybe not the next Ben Roethlisberger, it's possible he could have done all right with a better offense around him?
It's a fair point. We'll never know what he could have become with the right support. But it's something to think about.
Okay, so we've covered the offensive struggles, the quarterback questions, Tomlin's leadership, big picture. What does all this mean for the Steelers going forward?
I think the main takeaway is they're at a crossroads. Tough decisions coming up about players, about coaching. They got to figure out what went wrong and how to actually fix it.
One article says the first step is taking a hard look at the coaching staff. Like, Tomlin needs people around him who will push back, bring new ideas to the table. Yeah, makes sense. When you've been doing things one way for so long, it's easy to get stuck in a rut. Fresh perspective can really shake things up.
For sure. And it's not just about new faces, it's about the whole culture, right? Can people speak their minds? Can they disagree? If it's all yes men, that's not going to help anyone.
So how do you build that kind of culture where people feel comfortable challenging the head coach?
It's got to start with Tomlin himself. He's got to be the one who's open to feedback, even when it's tough to hear. New ideas, even if they go against what he's always done. Make it a place where everyone feels like their voice matters.
That's a good point. You never know where the next great idea is going to come from.
Right. And if you shut people down, if you're too stubborn to change, well, you're going to miss out.
So, okay, let's say Tomlin does all that.
Yeah.
Gets a good staff, builds that open culture. What else do the Steelers need to fix to get back on track?
Well, they got to figure out the quarterback situation, that's for sure. Wilson and Fields, that didn't really pan out. So what's next? Stick with one of those guys and hope for the best. Draft a new QB, hit up free agency.
Tough decisions. No easy answers there.
And then there's the rest of the offense, right? The O-line needs work, got to find some reliable running backs, and they got to get Pickens back to his potential.
It's going to be a busy offseason for the front office.
Yeah, no doubt.
But hey, at least they're not starting from nothing.
Yeah.
Still got a good defense, right? And a winning tradition.
Absolutely. And a coach who, even with some question marks, has won games in this league. So no need to hit the panic button yet.
Yeah, it's about making the right moves, learning from this past season, and coming back stronger.
Exactly. The Steelers have been down before. They always seem to find a way to bounce back. I'm optimistic.
That's good to hear. Thanks for breaking this all down with me. Really interesting deep dive into the Steelers season.
Happy to do it. Always fun to chat about this stuff.
And big thanks to James Unscripted for sponsoring this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another episode, something new to explore. Until then, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and keep those brains working.